in this presentation. So let us go through the details of COPO mapping as well as the attainment calculation. So first, what all we require? Maximum marks allocated for each sub-question in CIE question paper along with its CO mapping. Then CIE marks obtained by each student with respect to question number 1A, 1B and all sub-questions like that, with corresponding CO mapping. Then assignment marks, if quiz marks is there, we can also add over here. Then SEE marks scored by each student. Then finally the course exit survey. So with respect to COPO complete calculation, how much is the manual entry? So we have to make the entry with respect to maximum marks allocated for each sub question, then marks obtained by each student for each sub question, then assignment marks obtained by students, SEE marks after announcement of result for each student, then course exit survey, and finally COPO mapping and the PSO mapping. Now coming to the attainment. There are two different types of attainment that we are going to go through. First one is the direct attainment and one more is the indirect attainment. The direct attainment is calculated by making use of these three parts. First one, students CIE marks of all questions and sub-questions, so with corresponding CO mapping. Then the second, SEE marks obtained by each student, then assignment marks. All these three together is going to give us the direct attainment. The indirect attainment is straightforward, that is being obtained through the course exit survey. Let us take direct attainment one after the other. Within the direct attainment, let us start with the CIE marks. So go through this table in detail. So question numbers 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B like that. There will be a continuation of that. Then marks allocated for each sub question. For 1A it is 10, for 1B it is 5 like that for all questions. Then course outcome. That means question 1A is mapped to which course outcome, so that we have to mention over here. So like that CO1, CO2, so that is being represented here. Then here the USN of the student, then student name, then the marks scored by the individual student is being represented. So like this we have to do for all the internals that we are going to conduct. Now the direct attainment with respect to CO wise consolidated from all CIE. So this is what we had seen previously also. So we had just considered one CIE, one part of that CIE itself. So now here what we can observe is, so CO1, CO2 are being represented here, and as a part of further calculation I am just considering CO1 for representation. So here we can identify, see the student 1 attended two questions that belongs to CO1, that is 1A as well as 2B, right? So 1A maximum marks allocated is 10, for 2B it is 5. So with respect to CO1, the maximum marks allocated is equal to 15. Out of 15, how much student had scored? That is 7, then 5. 7 plus 5, it is 12. So 12 is represented. So like that for student 2, if you go through, so again maximum marks remains the same and obtained marks is, here it is 10 and here it is 5. So 15 out of 15 the student had scored. So like this for all the students with respect to CO1 we are going to calculate. Similarly for all COs also we are going to calculate. And this is going to be calculated by considering all the internals that is being conducted. 2 internals or 3 internals, how much from all those internals consolidated representation is what this table is going to represent. So like CO1 what we have calculated, similarly for CO2, CO3, how many COs are there, for all of them that is being calculated. Now Here is a representation with respect to all COs. See student 1, so maximum marks 15, he scored 12. So like that for CO2, CO3, CO4, CO5, from all the internals it is being represented here. Right. So one thing to be observed over here is with respect to CO2, if we consider as an example, so here is 25, 25 and suddenly the maximum marks has jumped to 35. So here what we are considering is, for example, if the maximum marks allocated for CO2 is 35, student had attended only 25 marks within that CO2. Then we are going to calculate only for 25 marks how much the student scored. If the student attended all the questions that belongs to CO2, then it will become 35. Out of 35, how much student scored is what? 33. So like this, we are going to make the calculation with respect to the maximum marks the student attended with respect to that particular CO2 and marks scored by that student with respect to that CO2 is what we are going to consider. So like that, similar you can observe with respect to CO3, CO4 as well as in CO5 also. Further, direct attainment SEE marks representation. After the completion of the examination and results are announced, we are going to get the SEE marks. So CIE marks already known for us. So I am considering this as an example. So for 40 marks, how much student scored? That is what the marks represented here. In the examination out of 60, how much student scored being represented? Combination of these two is what the total marks, that is out of 100. With respect to CIE, we already calculated the direct attainment part. Now we need to consider with respect to SAE, that means how much student scored in the examination out of 60. That means only these particular values we need to consider with respect to the SAE marks, not the total marks. Coming to the direct attainment with respect to the assignment. So with respect to the assignment, for each question which is the CO allocated, and for that CO how much is the maximum marks allocated and how much student had scored. We are going to make a complete representation of that, and then we are going to use the same for further calculation. So with respect to the illustration purpose here, I am considering that so all COs are equally distributed with respect to assignment, and we are going to consider 100% of the CO with respect to the assignment. Now coming to the last part of the direct attainment calculation. So it is being consolidated in two parts. So part A and the part B. In the part A, we are going to consider 75% of the CIE plus 25% of the assignment, that will make us 100%. And the second part is the final part with respect to the direct attainment. So that is 60% of the SEE plus 40% of this part A we are going to consider. So that is going to give us the final representation with respect to the direct attainment. The weightage being represented here may vary from institute to the institute based on their procedure. Now, this table is going to show the direct attainment calculation with respect to CO1, and these are the two parts that we are going to make use of. Now here USN and then name of the student. So first part CIE calculation with respect to CIE calculation, with respect to assignment calculation, combination of CIE and assignment, then internal representation, and then SEE with respect to SEE calculation, then final CO representation. Now let us go part by part. Now with respect to CIE, now this is the maximum marks we are going to have, so that we had already gone through previously in a table. So with respect to how much student had attended, out of that how much is the maximum marks allocated for that, then how much student had scored. Making use of these two, we are going to calculate the percentage marks scored by the student in the CIE. Then second part, the assignment part. So maximum marks allocated for CO1 and then how much student had scored and the percentage. Then combination of CIE and the assignment, that is for the part A calculation. So 75% of the CIE plus 25% of the assignment. So that means 75% of 80 plus 25% of 100 we are going to consider. From that we are going to have the value 85. Right? So for the further calculation we need to have 40% of part A. So that we are going to call that as the internal. So just a name is being given here. So 40% of CIE plus assignment, that is 40% of part A. 40% of 85 is what 34 being represented. Further, SEE, it is the maximum marks conducted for 60 marks. This is the university examination. So that is the fixed marks, no variation with respect to this one. So this is a value fixed 60 marks. Out of 60, how much student had scored. Making use of these two, we are going to calculate the percentage. So 36 out of 60, in the sense it is the 60%, and then 60% of 60% of mark 60 we are going to calculate. So that is going to give us 36. So why we need this 60%, in the sense the formula is like that only. 60% of the examination marks we have to take. So that's what we are taking, 60%. So that is going to give us the value 36. So like that for all students we are going to calculate. So final CO is 60% of the exam plus 40% of the part A. 60% of the exam calculated here. 40% of CIE plus assignment is represented here. Add these two values, we are going to have the final CO value. So like this it is being calculated for all the students, and finally an average of that is also represented. Like this we are going to calculate for all the COs, CO2, CO3, up to how many COs we are going to have. So we have completed the direct attainment calculation. Now we have to make a verification that the student had reached this direct attainment criteria or not. That means target is reached or not. That is what the requirement. So with respect to direct attainment, the target is reached or not, that we have to verify. And this is what the target the faculty is going to set. So here as a part of example, 60% is being taken. So with respect to each student, with respect to each CO, we are going to make a verification. So student 1, with respect to CO1, is this student had attained greater than 60% or not? If reached, then we mark it as yes, otherwise we mark it as no. So in this example taken, all are yes. So there is no rule that everything must be yes, there will be no also. So then we are going to make a mapping process with respect to that mapping in the range of 3 to 1. That is the rubrics we are going to have. So with respect to that mapping, I am going to get this second part of this table. So in this second part, if the student had scored greater than 60%, then we are going to mark that with 3. In the range of 50 and less than 60, we consider as 2. Less than 50%, we mark it as 1. Based on that rubrics, so this is being represented. Now coming to the indirect attainment part. So in the indirect attainment, we are going to have only the course exit survey that is being given by the student with respect to each subject or each course, that we are going to consider, and we are going to map that to the rubrics. So in our example, so the values taken is in the range of 5 to 1. Initially the feedback is being taken in the range of 5 to 1. So we need to reduce that to the rubrics level 3 to 1, which is there in the direct attainment also. We must always maintain the rubrics level between 3 to 1 or 5 to 1. So we are maintaining 3 to 1 range. Therefore, so I need to map these values to the range of 3 to 1. So what I am doing is, whatever the student had given with respect to each of these, that is being mapped over here. Then each of these is converted into the percentage value. Based on the percentage, again it is being mapped to the rubrics value. So the rubrics representation with respect to percentage, how we are going to map is being given over here. Here also we are going to set the attainment level for 60%. Greater than 60 it is 3, 52 less than 60 to less than 50 it's 1. So using that we are going to map to the rubrics. But there is nothing like it must be fixed only to the 60. So based on the faculty's idea, it can be changed to 70, 75 like that also. Now coming to the final attainment. So in the final attainment, we are going to consider 80% of the direct attainment plus 20% of the indirect attainment. So this percentage what is being represented, this may change based on the institution, but here as a part of example I am considering 80% of the direct attainment and 20% of the indirect attainment. Now let us go through this table, and this table is being done only with respect to the CO1. Now USN, student name, then direct attainment, then indirect attainment, then combination of both. Now with respect to the direct attainment, so how much student 1 had scored, that's what the percentage. This percentage is mapped to the rubrics. Similarly, indirect attainment percentage, that is being mapped to the rubrics, and then 80% of direct attainment, that means 80% of value 3 plus 20% of this indirect attainment, that is value 3, added together, we are going to have the final attainment. Since both the values are 3 here, final attainment also we are going to get as 3. So like this we are going to do for all the students, and finally we are going to average that, and here we are going to get this as 2.81. So this is with respect to only CO1 is being shown here. So like this we are going to calculate across all the COs, and final representation average value is being given over here. For CO1 2.81, so like this shown. So similarly for CO2 it's 2.88 and up to CO5. Average of all these CO1 to CO5, that's got the final average 2.82. Before going to the next stage, let us first understand this correlation table. The rubrics we are going to consider is at 3 levels, that is 3, 2 and 1. If we divide this complete to the range of 0 to 1, then we are going to get the first value as 0.33, then 0.66, we rounded it off to 0.67, then the value 1. Making use of this, we are going to create the correlation table. So first part, we have already obtained this attainment with respect to CO1 to CO5 as a part of direct attainment. We are going to make use of this further. If the user has represented the rubrics level 3, it means that with respect to CO1, we have to multiply this 2.81 with the value 1, and this is what the correlation level we are going to have, that is 2.81. If the user has given the rubrics value as 2, then with respect to CO1, 2.81 will be multiplied with 0.67, then 1.88 will be the correlation value. Like that, for the rubrics 1, the correlation value will be 0.93. So this is with respect to CO1. Similarly, this is with respect to CO2, then CO3 up to CO5 we are going to have. Now coming to the COPO mapping. Now in the COPO mapping, this part is user provided, and this second part, that is table 2, is obtained from the correlation table. So with respect to the CO1 to CO5, we are going to map each of these COs with the POs defined in the program. See the course CO, to what extent it is mapping to the program outcome. So like that, we are going to give the rubrics. Again, it is in the range of 3 to 1. For example, being taken CO1 matches with PO1 to the maximum extent, then it will be represented by 3. So if CO1 matches with PO2 with a moderate level or the average level, then we call it as, then we are going to represent that by 2. So like that, for all COs with respect to all POs is being represented here. Then a average with respect to this is being represented here. Now we are going to map this complete table based on this correlation levels. So as I told you before, if the rubrics value is 3 with respect to CO1, then with respect to CO1, if the rubrics is 3, then it is 2.81 we are going to get. That is being represented over here. Right, as you can observe, CO1, the next value it is here, rubrics it is value 2. 2 in the sense it is the moderate level, then the middle value we have to consider. So it is 1.88, so that is being represented here. So like this, it is being done for the complete table. Then an average with respect to each PO is calculated. So here it is average of all, it is 2.82. So like that we are going to calculate for all of them. Now an percentage is also calculated. So highest array value is 3. With respect to that, it is the score here is 2.82. Calculate the percentage, it is 94%. Like that, calculate for all of them. So now we have calculated the percentage value. For that percentage, we are going to draw a graph, and this graph is known as the attainment graph. Now finally, how much we have to keep in the course file? That is what the important thing. So we have done everything with the calculation, and finally we have to take the printout of few sheets that has to be represented. Among them, first one, the course information sheet, which also include information about how much target has been set. Then table containing each student's attainment with respect to each COs, that is yes or no table that has shown previously. Then final attainment table, that is including direct attainment plus indirect attainment. Combination of these two we derived the final attainment table. We do require that. Then CO1 attainment average value across all the students, CO2 attainment average across all students. So like that, CO3, CO4, CO5, all of them. Then from CO1 to CO5, whatever the average obtained, average of all those has been calculated, that we need to represent. That is what the average of all COs. Then CO PO mapping table, and finally final PO attainment table as well as its graph. Right. So along with that, as a part of indirect attainment, we also need to maintain the course exit survey in a short form, that is in the form of a graph. Thanks for joining.